Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive into stress and anxiety. We're tackling a big topic today.
Hey, Bonia.
We'll be using Emma McAdam's article, Daily Habits to Reduce Stress and Anxiety. She's a licensed therapist, and, I was really struck by some of the practical advice she offers in this piece.
Really great stuff, yeah.
Our goal today is to give you some actionable strategies for managing stress and anxiety, those things we all face in everyday life. You ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Awesome. So Emma starts off her article with a really fascinating anecdote about a farming family back in the 1800s.
Well, this is a good one.
It is. So imagine this. A sudden frost threatens their entire corn crop,
Okay.
and they end up spending the entire night just frantically watering each and every single stalk, battling to save, their livelihood.
I mean, talk about pressure.
Right. It's such a powerful image, and it really gets you thinking about the nature of stress, you know?
For sure. I think it really highlights the core function of stress. It's our body's performance mode. It's designed to help us face threats, kind of like an evolutionary alarm system.
That makes sense. So in that story, the rush of adrenaline those farmers felt, it helped them stay up all night.
Yep, pushing their bodies to the limit to protect what mattered most to them.
So are you saying that stress itself isn't necessarily a bad thing?
Yeah, exactly. It's when it becomes chronic, that unresolved stress, that's where the problem lies.
I see.
For that farming family, there was a clear resolution. Either the crops survived or they didn't. It was a stressful situation, but it had a definite endpoint. Their bodies could then, return to a state of rest and recovery.
Right. So there was a clear beginning and end to that stressful event, which is so different from the kinds of stress we often face today.
Totally different. Our modern stressors, those are a whole other beast.
Yeah, so true. Because our stressors are often these intangible things, right? And they just keep coming. It's like deadlines at work, expectations from, everyone, the constant flood of information we're dealing with all the time. It's like our brains are stuck in overdrive.
And, it's like our ancient brains haven't quite caught up to the always-on 2047 nature of modern life.
Right.
We're bombarded with these stressors that never seem to have a clear resolution. So we're kind of stuck in this perpetual state of low-grade stress. And our fight-or-flight response, which was designed for short bursts of intense activity, is now triggered constantly.
It's exhausting. And I imagine that leads to all sorts of problems.
Absolutely. It can manifest in a bunch of different ways. Physical issues, emotional issues. It takes a toll.
So we've got our bodies primed for action, but we're stuck in this state of constant mental stress. It sounds like there's a real disconnect there.
There is a big one. And that's where these 10 daily habits that Emma outlines come in. It's like they're giving us tools to sort of recalibrate our systems,
I like that, recalibrate, so we can manage that stress overload and find a more sustainable way to be. Okay, I'm ready to hear about these habits. Let's start with the first one, which is exercise. And I have a feeling this ties into what we were just talking about, our bodies being ready for action.
It totally does. Remember all that adrenaline we talked about? Well, exercise is one of the best ways to help our bodies process it. When we're physically active, we're essentially giving our bodies a chance to complete that stress cycle that was triggered by that fight-or-flight response.
So we're actually using up that pent-up energy for what it was originally intended for.
Exactly. And here's the thing. You don't have to become a marathon runner to reap the benefits. Even 5 minutes of movement can make a difference.
Right.
A brisk walk, some jumping jacks, dancing around your living room, it all counts.
That's good to hear because I'm not exactly a gym rat. But I can definitely commit to, 5 minutes of moving my body.
And what's even better is that exercise actually triggers the release of endorphins. Those are our natural mood boosters, right? It's like a double whammy, burning off the stress hormones and getting a dose of feel-good chemicals at the same time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm starting to see why this is the first habit on the list. So what's next? What's the second habit?
All right, so the next habit focuses on how we start our day, establishing a solid morning routine. And Emma makes a really interesting point about what not to do first thing in the morning.
Let me guess. No checking emails or scrolling through social media.
You nailed it. Yeah, she really emphasizes how important it is to start the day with intention and not by immediately diving into potential stressors.
That makes sense.
I mean, think about it. You're still in that relaxed, kind of sleepy state, and then suddenly you're hit with information overload, demands, and often a lot of negativity.
Right.
It's like jolting your system into stress mode before you've even had a chance to fully wake up.
Oh, I've definitely noticed that when I start my day by checking my phone, I just feel more anxious and overwhelmed. But if I resist that urge and ease into the day with a bit of quiet time, I feel so much more grounded.
Exactly. It's about creating a buffer between your resting state and the demands of the day. Even a few minutes of quiet reflection, meditation, or just some gentle stretching can really make a difference.
It's like setting the tone for the whole day. So we've got exercise for burning off that stress energy and a mindful morning routine to start the day off right. What's next?
All right, this next one builds on the idea of intentionality, and it's all about mindful media consumption.
Mindful media consumption. I have a feeling this one's tough for a lot of us. It's just so easy to get sucked into that constant stream of information and stimulation.
Yeah, it's a struggle. But Emma's article really drives home how important it is to be conscious of the media we consume, especially when it comes to negative news.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a problem. I mean, we were just talking about how our brains are wired to respond to threats, right? And the news is, well, often filled with stories of conflict, disaster, uncertainty.
It's like a constant trigger for our stress response.
Exactly. And with that 24/7 news cycle, it's nonstop.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
like we're tethered to this fire hose of negativity,
Yeah.
and it's no wonder we end up feeling overwhelmed and anxious.
So this isn't about like burying our heads in the sand and pretending everything is fine, right?
No, not at all.
It's more about choosing what we let into our mental space.
Exactly, being selective.
Yeah.
Because we do have a choice, you know?
Right.
And the media we consume, it has a direct impact on our mood and energy levels.
So it's like we're curating our own mental environment in a way.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Instead of just passively taking in whatever's thrown at us, we can make a conscious choice to consume media that aligns with how we want to feel.
Okay, that makes sense. So if you're feeling stressed, maybe stem away from the news and choose something more uplifting.
Exactly.
Like actively choosing to nourish your mind with something positive instead of, I don't know, a constant diet of stress-inducing content.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not about disconnecting from the world entirely.
Right.
It's about finding that balance. Knowing your own limits and recognizing when your media consumption is starting to have a negative effect on your well-being.
So we've got exercise, a mindful morning routine, and now mindful media consumption. It's like building a foundation for a calmer life, I guess.
Building a foundation.
Yeah.
What's the next habit on Emma's list?
Okay, so this one might sound a bit too simple, but it's actually pretty powerful. It's all about marking tasks as complete.
Really? Just like checking things off a to-do list?
Yeah.
That can reduce stress.
You'd be surprised. It has a real impact on our nervous systems. See, when we complete a task, even a small one, our brains release dopamine,
Dopamine, yeah.
the neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and reward.
So it's like giving ourselves a little reward each time we cross something off.
Yeah. And that sense of accomplishment, it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that helps us calm down and relax.
Right.
It's like hitting the reset button on our stress response. Wow, I never thought of it that way. I'm totally guilty of just rushing through my to-do list without, stopping to acknowledge what I've actually gotten done.
It's easy to do. We get so focused on what's next that we don't take the time to savor those small wins.
Yeah, that's true.
But when we consciously mark tasks as complete, whether it's physically crossing them off or using a completion button in an app, we activate that relaxation response and create a sense of closure.
I'm going to have to try that. It's such a small change, but I can see how it could make a difference.
It really can. It kind of ties into the next habit, which is all about slowing down, resisting that urge to rush when we feel stressed.
Oh, that's a tough one. My instinct is always to go into overdrive when I'm stressed, trying to do everything at once.
I get that. It's a natural reaction. But remember, that constant state of high alert, it's not sustainable.
It's like we're running a marathon at a sprint pace.
Exactly. We're bound to burn out. So Emma calls this habit, slow down, don't run. And it's all about making a conscious choice to pause, take a breath, and reassess when that stress starts to creep in.
So instead of just reacting, we take a moment to respond thoughtfully.
Exactly. Because sometimes that initial reaction, that knee-jerk response, isn't the most effective one. Sometimes the best thing we can do is step back, gather ourselves, and approach the situation with a clear head.
Makes sense. This reminds me of what we were talking about earlier about multitasking.
Oh, yeah?
If we're constantly rushing and trying to do a million things at once, we're probably not doing any of them very well, right?
You're absolutely right. And that actually leads perfectly into the next habit Emma discusses. It's the myth of multitasking.
It's a myth. I thought multitasking was like a required skill these days.
I know, right? But research shows that our brains just aren't designed to focus on multiple things at once.
I mean, I've definitely noticed that when I try to do too many things at the same time, I end up feeling more scattered and stressed, and the quality of my work really takes a hit.
That's because when we multitask, we're actually just rapidly switching our attention back and forth between tasks.
Ah, okay.
And that drains our cognitive resources and increases the likelihood of making mistakes.
So instead of trying to juggle everything at once, we're better off focusing on one thing at a time.
Exactly. Emma calls it monotasking. And it's about giving your full attention to one task at a time, without distractions or interruptions. You might think it would slow you down, but it can actually make you more efficient in the long run.
Okay, so monotasking. That's going to take some practice, but I can see how it could be really helpful. What's the next habit Emma recommends?
Okay, so this one's all about prioritizing, making conscious choices about what to focus on and what to let go of. Emma calls it big picture, small picture.
Ooh, that's a good one. Especially when we're feeling overwhelmed by all the demands on our time and energy. How do we even begin to figure out what to prioritize?
It starts with recognizing that we simply can't do everything. Trying to do so is a recipe for burnout.
That's true, but easier said than done, right? Like, how do we actually put that into practice?
One approach Emma suggests is journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings can help you gain some clarity about what's truly important to you and what you can comfortably let go of.
Kind of like making a mental inventory of all the things we're juggling.
Exactly. And another tool that can be incredibly helpful is a good old-fashioned to-do list.
Ah, I love a good to-do list.
Me too. By getting everything out of your head and onto paper, you can start to prioritize tasks and identify what absolutely needs to get done and what can maybe wait.
I use my to-do list to feel more in control of my day.
That's a great way to use it. It's about taking back control from that feeling of overwhelm.
Okay, what's next? We're getting close to the end of Emma's list, right?
We are. And the next one is probably no surprise. Sleep.
Sleep! I knew it was coming, and I need to hear it. I don't always prioritize it like I should.
It's so important, though, especially when it comes to managing stress. Emma really emphasizes the vital role sleep plays in regulating our emotions, improving our cognitive function, and just making us more resilient to stress.
I know when I haven't slept well, I'm definitely more irritable, and I don't handle challenges very well.
It's not just you. There's a lot of research that shows when we're sleep deprived, our brains just aren't as good at processing emotions. We become more susceptible to stress and anxiety.
So getting enough sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's about giving our brains the downtime they need to actually handle stress effectively.
Exactly. And it's not just about the quantity of sleep, but the quality too. Creating a consistent sleep schedule, having a relaxing bedtime routine, making sure your sleep environment is comfortable. All of these things contribute to better sleep.
Okay, so sleep is key. What are the last two habits?
The next one is all about setting boundaries, which I know can be tough.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm so bad at saying no. I always end up taking on too much.
I think a lot of us struggle with that. But setting boundaries is essential for preventing overload and burnout. It's about protecting your time and energy so you can show up fully for the things that are most important to you.
Yeah, I get that. But isn't some stress good for us? I mean, doesn't it motivate us?
That's a good point. And you're right, some stress can be beneficial. It can push us to grow and achieve things. But chronic, overwhelming stress, that's the kind that takes a toll.
Right, so it's about finding that sweet spot, challenge but not overwhelm.
Exactly. And setting boundaries helps us find that balance.
So boundaries are about saying no to protect our well-being, I guess. What's the final habit Emma recommends?
The last one is nature.
Nature. I love that one. I always feel so much better after spending time outdoors.
There's a reason for that. It's not just in our heads. There's growing scientific evidence that shows the benefits of spending time in nature.
Really? Like what?
Studies have shown that it can actually reduce stress hormones, lower blood pressure, improve mood, boost creativity. Some research even suggests it can enhance our immune function.
Wow. Nature is powerful medicine, it sounds like. And you don't have to go on some big wilderness adventure to reap the benefits, right?
Nope, not at all. Even small doses of nature can make a difference. Things like stepping outside to look at the sky for a few minutes, taking care of a houseplant, even watching a nature documentary.
It's about finding those little ways to reconnect with the natural world.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect note to end on, it's about finding those little ways to reconnect with the natural world.
And recognizing that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves, I guess.
Exactly. So we've got exercise, mindful morning routine, mindful media consumption, marking tasks as complete, slowing down, monotasking, The big picture, small picture approach, sleep, boundaries, and nature. That's quite the toolkit for stress management.
It is. It's like a whole lifestyle shift.
It is. It really is. And speaking of lifestyle, Emma's article also delves into something else that I think is really interesting, the role of caffeine.
Oh, yeah. Caffeine. I'm a big coffee drinker, so I'm definitely curious to hear what she has to say about that.
Well, I think a lot of us rely on caffeine to get going in the morning or to power through that afternoon slump.
Oh, yeah.
But while caffeine can give us that temporary energy boost, it also impacts our anxiety levels and sleep patterns.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've definitely noticed that when I drink too much coffee, I feel kind of jittery and anxious. But I'm curious, how does caffeine actually work in the body to produce those effects?
So caffeine is a stimulant, and it blocks a neurotransmitter called adenosine. Adenosine is actually what promotes sleep and relaxation.
Okay.
So when adenosine is blocked, our brains become more alert and active, leading to that, caffeine buzz. But that increased alertness, it comes with a bit of a cost. Caffeine also triggers the release of adrenaline, which is the hormone associated with the stress response.
Yeah. So it's like we're giving our bodies a double dose of stress hormones when we drink caffeine.
Kinda, yeah. And while we might get used to the effects of caffeine over time, that doesn't mean the anxiety-inducing effects go away.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about it that way.
And here's another interesting thing. Caffeine can disrupt sleep for up to 48 hours after you consume it.
48 hours? Really?
Yeah. So even if you avoid caffeine in the evening, it could still be affecting your sleep.
Hmm. I guess that explains why I sometimes have trouble sleeping, even when I think I'm being careful about my caffeine intake.
Exactly. The effects linger much longer than we realize, impacting both our sleep and our overall stress levels.
Oh.
And Emma points out that for some people, regular caffeine consumption may even contribute to anxiety and depressive disorders.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely giving me something to think about. I'm starting to see how my caffeine habit might actually be playing a role in my overall stress levels.
It's not about demonizing caffeine completely.
Right.
A lot of people enjoy caffeinated beverages without experiencing those negative side effects. It's really about being mindful of your consumption. Pay attention to how it's affecting you. Maybe try cutting back for a few days and see how you feel.
That's a good idea. Sometimes I think we get so used to feeling a certain way that we don't even realize how much better we could feel if we just made a few small changes.
Absolutely. And I think that's really the key message that Emma is trying to convey in her article, that small, sustainable changes can make a huge difference in our well-being.
It's not about like overhauling your entire life over now, right?
Right.
It's about those little tweaks and adjustments that we can actually stick with.
Exactly. It's about building a lifestyle that supports our mental and emotional health.
I love that. So to recap, we've learned that stress itself isn't necessarily bad. It's that chronic, unresolved stress that we need to watch out for. And we've explored these 10 everyday habits, from exercise and morning routines to mindful media consumption and spending time in nature, that can help us manage stress and anxiety and create a more balanced life. Oh, and we've talked about caffeine and how it can impact our mental health.
We've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a really interesting discussion. Hopefully everyone listening has walked away with some new strategies to try.
I know I have. What about you? What's one habit from today's deep dive that you're going to focus on?
That's a good question. I think for me, I'm going to try to be more mindful about how I start my day. Putting my phone down, maybe starting with a few minutes of meditation. What about you?
I think I'm going to prioritize getting outside more, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Those are great goals. And remember, even the smallest changes can have a ripple effect. When we take care of ourselves, it benefits everyone around us too.
So true. Well, that wraps up another deep dive. Thanks to everyone for listening.
And remember, you have the power to create a life that feels calmer, more balanced, and more joyful. It starts with one small step.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.